So good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to the stage. Did you know that by 2020, we'll be operating in a sea of just over 40 trillion gigabytes of data? And in your organizations, you're all armed to be able to have hyper-awareness so that you can make informed decisions and you can act fast and act smart. Today we're joined by 4 esteemed panelists who are going to talk us through some of the smart data metrics that they're using today in order to manage this challenge of big data. Welcome Puneet Garg, Head of Data Science, Carousell, Yann AitBachir, Head of Data Shopback at Shopback, and Akbar Ahmed, Data Science Lead, Datavlt, and Korey Lee, Head of Data of South China Morning Post. Guys, just to kick off the panel, if you could just give everybody an understanding of what it is your function actually does, because I know we all wear common job titles, but we don't always do the same things.
Sure. Thanks a lot for the introduction. So as Head of Data Science at Carousell, my job is to leverage the power of our data to really delight our users and help business achieve their objectives using predictive analytics, smart AI-powered solutions. So that's what I do. My team does.
So at South China Morning Post, I oversee data engineering, data science, and data analytics. And our kind of remit is to lead the global conversation on China. But from my perspective on data, how do we engage with users in more meaningful and personalized ways?
So yeah, for me it's very, very similar of what you said. So I'm heading the data team at Shopback, same thing, data engineering, data science initiative, data analyst, supporting the business with key business metrics to help them to make data-driven decisions, and at the same time owning every data science initiative that can help the user to have a personalized journey on Shopback.
Hi, my name is Akbar, and I work for Datavlt. I'm the head of the data science team at Datavlt, and we, as Datavlt, provide a product as a service which helps you do analytics on. And for now, we are looking on to a couple of domains such as retail, media, sports, and so on. Yeah, thank you.
Great, thanks for the clarity. Now, I'd like to kick off the first part of this panel with some key questions about what the key metrics are that we're looking for in our business and why those specific metrics. Puneet, do you want to start?
Sure. I'll start with a quote from my favorite book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. So one quote that very stick with me is, if your ladder is leaning against the wrong wall, every step takes you to the wrong destination faster. And I think that's where the metrics play an important role. If you do not have the right metrics that capture the essence of your business objectives, no matter what you do, what you work towards, you are just making progress towards the wrong goals. In the age of big data, there is a lot to explore. There are a lot of different kind of metrics that you can look at. And often these metrics are also conflicting with each other. Hence, being very intentional about what you want to measure, what you care about, is the key. So that's what I would like to add here.
So what are the data metrics you look at Carousell, and why?
In addition to the traditional metrics around revenue, around user, like MAUs, daily active users, one of the most important metric on our platform, which Carousell is a marketplace, right, where people can buy and sell items directly, like C2C. The most important metric is liquidity. How fast items move on our platform. How quickly sellers are able to sell and buyers are able to buy. So that's one of the key metrics that we measure.
And what about at South China Morning Post, Korey?
Naturally, we look at monthly active users as well, and what kind of readers are engaging with us from different geographies. We actually have most of our readership is actually international, with the U.S. being our largest market now. So that shifted quite a bit from a few years ago, where Hong Kong was our majority market, to now U.S. being our majority market. But what's really meaningful is attention, right? So if we can capture a user's attention, we can add value to their life. And so if we're fundamentally, if they're reading us, if they're reading additional content and spending more time with us, then we think that that's probably the most meaningful sign and signal that they're continuing to come back. So looking at loyalty, retention, and really just attention and measured in time, page views, and a number of other things.
And you recently removed a big hurdle at South China Morning Post, the paywall. Did that change your metrics?
The paywall was removed a while back. That was back in 2016, and we've grown our readership quite a bit. So we've grown over 4 times in the past few years. And again, that shift from kind of a local market to international presence. So I think that's been very encouraging. And we have to write for a very different audience. We also have a very engaged audience here in Singapore. Oftentimes, depending on the news cycle, Singapore is among the top 5, in terms of readership online and social.
Okay. And Yann, how about you? What are you measuring?
So yeah, at Shopback, our mission is to help the user to make smarter shopping decisions. So we have some key metrics to measure that, like repeating purchase that we're doing every week on our platform. And these are more North Star metrics that we're trying to improve as a business, because we think that if it's going higher, it demonstrates that our users like our platform or like our product. But next to that, we have more and more metrics that are more actionable, that we can place on L1 and L2, that can be obviously acquisition of new customer, but also retention of the customer, margin or revenue that we can make, and also value that we provide to our merchant on Shopback.
And as a service provider, you obviously get a very general view of the market. What are you seeing as the priority data metrics?
Right. So for us, because we work as a analytics provider, as a consultant, as a business development personnel, we look at things, for me and for my company, particularly efficiency. Driving efficiency by using your data is our main key metrics. Because how we feel at Datavlt is it all trickle downs. If we are efficient, it improves our retaining rate, it improves our sales. That in return improves the revenues. If we are doing things in an efficient manner, we are cutting down a certain element of risk as well. So for me and for my company, it all comes down to how efficient are we and how we can make that happen with the other company.
And so many of your metrics are tied to the 4 pillars of business survival, right? Revenue, market share, efficiencies, and costs. When you look at it from the board level, and this is really a question for you, Akbar, delivering these dashboards across your businesses, what are the key metrics that board members are looking at to have an oversight of their business operations? Right.
For us, because our product is aimed at all levels of expertise, from advanced users to a novice, So we have kind of drilled it down. So for a CEO, they won't see monthly and weekly sales. They'll just see a quarterly sale figure. Then, and as the users go by, they see a separate set of values there, which helps them realize the actual potential of how well their business is doing, how well are they selling, where are the bottlenecks in their processes. So we've basically broken down in terms of user complexity. And of course, the metrics do change a little bit, but they kind of stay same.
So I see that as an operational level, that ability to drill down. But what about when you take it all the way up to the top and you're looking at the health of your business overall? Do you guys have a view of what metrics your board members want to see to make sure that their businesses are operating healthily and with good governance?
I think there are the simple philosophy that we follow at Carousell is track everything, measure everything, but at the same time, be very intentional about what we value and we are going to pay close attention to. We categorize our metrics into 2 important clusters. One is our health metrics, which tell whether the overall product growth is strong, the core is strong, the first principles we are not compromising on. And the second set of metrics are the core business metrics, which are our success metrics around like revenue, around user growth. So these are the metrics that we pay close attention to, so that while we are, like a lot of times what happens is in the view of flashy metrics like monthly active users or revenue, you might end up compromising on some of the more fundamental growth and health metrics. And that's why we make sure we have a good collection of a very small set of metrics that we monitor, but something which gives us multifaceted view of our business.
And how about you, Korey? Do you have health and growth metrics also?
Yeah, so we operate on the OKR framework, which was popularized by Intel, is used by Google, so objective and key results. So you have a top-line objective and then several results that kind of you can measure that objective against. So of course we have revenue and user engagement, but also other ones that are related to our people team or our corp comms or data, product. So at what point do things roll out? How many people are we hiring? Are we retaining our people? And so we think about this in each facet of our organization in a slightly different way, right? Because each team has its own metrics, and obviously we review these at the company level with our board, but also we've made these metrics to some degree transparent with our staff as well. So through town hall meetings and whatnot, and that gives, I think, everyone a collective sense of ownership and buy-in. And so each team has there's company level OKRs, team level OKRs, and then some teams also have individual OKRs as well. So again, it kind of trickles down, and everybody feels a sense of owning a piece of that pie.
Fantastic. And what about you, Yann? How are things at Shopback?
So at Shopback, it's very similar again. So as we're using the OKR framework, each team have their own metrics that they are tracking as North Star metric, as I explained. And after dividing this at OKRs that we're creating for every quarter, where we are tracking, that means that they're helping to increase that top metrics that is led by the team. So that's why we don't have a global top metric that we track everywhere. Some product team might be more interested by the active user or the repeating customer. Also, it depends also of each product, where is the stage, if we're still in the early stage of product market fit, when we will talk more about user adoption of that feature. So based on that, each team has their own metric and OKR to drive this metric up. And is the best way to be sure that if we're doing properly our OKR and we're doing properly, we're getting our key result done, our metric going up and is good for the company.
Now this assumes that we've got great data, right?
Yeah.
So tell me about the constraints of getting that data quality into the system.
So I think a lot of times we look at metrics from business perspective or product health perspective. But one of the most important things is to look at metrics for the data. Not only using data for the metrics, but can you trust this data? Is this data something that you can trust? It follows the governance rules and policies that you have for the company. Are you taking good care of your the privacy policies? So that's something which we pivot on extensively. Because if you cannot trust your data, all bets are off. Any insights that you are generating from that data are again something you cannot trust. So that's how we make sure that we invest heavily in the metrics for the data quality before we look at how do we get insights from that data down the stream.
And what about you, Korey? How do you ensure that you don't have garbage in, garbage out? What are the governance factors that you've built into your systems?
Sure. I think it starts with building a strong data foundation. So building infrastructure and checks and balances in place that you can actually trust but verify the data that's coming in. So we invested quite a bit, especially when I first joined, in building out a very solid data infrastructure. So pipelining data in from first-party data all the way to third-party data coming in from various social platforms, and really bringing that all into one data warehouse, data lake, so that we could pull it out of there for analysis, for AI, for machine learning, and eventually layer other tools on top of that. So I think foundationally it starts with infrastructure, and then on top of that, once you have verified that that data is good, then you can start to build things on top of that. Otherwise, you're correct in that it's garbage in, garbage out. But if you have high quality data, then you get high quality metrics, and then hopefully high quality predictions and understanding of user engagement.
So at Shopback, we also investing a lot in infrastructure, but what is really important for our team, the data team in Shopback, is to drive the data culture across the company, not only sharing the metric, but everyone owns their metric, and they are able to they are able to understand them, they are able to take action out of them and take decisions. That's really important to build the data culture across the company, to be sure that it's not only about one number and the quality of the number, it's about the action that you're taking out of that.
And Akbar, what kind of feedback loops are people building into their architectures to ensure that they have the weak signals of poor quality in the system?
Right. So if everyone here in this space were following what these three gentlemen have said, it would make all of our lives very easy. But at the end of the day, these are just some of the challenges which I, as a consultant, or I, as a solution provider, face. Is, first of all, the data is not consistent, because you start collecting some data, and then after a couple of weeks or something, you say, come, let's do something else, or come, let's start analyzing some kind of data, and you forget the data which you were collecting, you start again. So, and then you come to me with 50, 500 different columns saying, see, I've got so much of data. But it's all missing, because 2 weeks before you were selecting 50 fields, now you're selecting 100 fields. So that's one thing, not being consistent in how we are collecting data. And then sometimes there's a very big misconception. I have data, I am collecting data, but the problem which you want to solve is not for which you are collecting your data. So, you know, so there is a very big disconnect sometimes. So that's why, for what I personally feel is, have an objective in mind and then start collecting data. Don't just collect data for the sake of it and then say, come, let's find something out from it. You know, because then human bias kicks in. Because you already know at the back of your mind, or someone knows what they want to see from that data, and because it's not the appropriate set of data, you don't get to see the results. And then like, AI is useless, it's a waste of time, we are good enough doing Excel work, you know. So yeah, so these are some of the things which I like to tell people, that please be clear with your business objective and the data which you are collecting.
And obviously, this whole process of data collection, classification, and processing inside our organizations is complex. And getting the organization on board to support you is a challenge, because ultimately we're human beings and you have to motivate and incentivize us accordingly. Where do you see the big disconnects are in achieving what we set out to achieve?
I'll start. I think the two things, one is education, and second is, I think the proof is in the pudding. When you deliver impact, you get easy buy-in. As a like, in a way, representatives for the data discipline in the company, it's a job to realize, like make the leadership realize that we are having two products. Like Carousell as a product, there is one product which is that app, that application, that platform where people are coming and interacting with the listings. And the other product we have is the data. Data in itself is a product that we are building upon, and at the end of the day, the power lies in having rich data that can be used to match buyers and sellers so that they both can achieve more together. So once I think you are able to provide the right education and show early wins, it's easy to get the stakeholders convinced.
And how big a role does alignment of incentives play in that, Korey?
I think I kind of think about this in the context of a very simple acronym, so T, like TEA, so transparency, education, and access. So transparency being, you know, just building a culture of being transparent, being you know, giving data to the people that need it. I think a lot of companies have the problem where they want to be very protective of their data. So limited access to the data warehouse, limited access to numbers, and I think that creates that creates problems. Education being training and equipping people to understand what these metrics are. So we have very basic courses from metrics and why they matter. What's an MAU? What's a PV? All the way up to more advanced courses in Python and how to get data out of other platforms. And then the last one is access. So making sure that people can see this data and get it in their inbox, on their mobile, on their desktop 24/7. Right? So continue access to the data. So transparency, education, and access.
Excellent. And what about at Shopback, Yann? What do you see as the biggest challenges?
I'm pretty aligned about what you said, Korey, about transparency, access, and education. That's one of the challenges. We're generating more and more data. We are able to compute more and more metrics, and people are in the company are always eager to consume more and more data to help them in our day-to-day decision or more on a global strategy decision. So in terms of challenge, there's one very important thing that we have to do is to be sure that the business owner are really aligned about the definition of the metrics and what does it mean. And in a company that creating more and more metrics to track, it's really important to always be sure that everyone is aligned. And it's part of the education, but it's an ongoing process. It's not only one-shot training, but always to refresh the mind about what is this data, why is it important, how is it compute, and what kind of conclusion you can get out of it.
I have worked with SMEs, and I have worked with multinationals. And for example, multinationals having 50 different departments and an SME of a strength of 5 people. They all came and said, no one wants to share data. And I asked them, why don't people want to share data? They were like, we lose control over it. My department for multinational, they said, my department has spent money collecting this data. I have put in resources in IT from my budget to collect this data. Why should, for example, sales reap the benefit of the marketing budget? Take a company of 5 SMEs, one person in finance and one person in sales, saying, I spend 15 hours in a day in finance just collecting all the data and everything. Why should I end up giving that same spreadsheet to my salespeople and then they just go back home and that's it? So we as a company, and when we approach such situations, we try to link them up by saying or by showing the benefits of sharing data. If marketing is giving a budget and creating a report, that same level of data, but for a different user, can be used. And then the budget can be shared in between them. So this is how we encourage people to share data amongst each other. Yes, it's mission and business critical data. You can always move a little bit of it out, but to help make decisions is how we actually incentivize people, that you share your data, you share your budget, and it's like, one report with 2 different views. So this is how we conquer this challenge.
Okay, so we've looked here at alignment of incentives, alignment of our stakeholders, and transparency, education, and access. In the spirit of this, if we think about the different data metrics that we're using across the business, some of these are real time, some of these are just in time, and some of these are very traditional metrics. What's the balance in today's digital economy? Is there a specific balance?
I think you need all of them. And each one serves a slightly different purpose, right? The historical metrics enable you to forecast the future to some degree. You can't always predict the future, but you can take your best shot at it with historical data. and some other indicators. And then the just-in-time and real-time data enables you to react, to be more agile. So if our editorial team sees a trending story on social media or on another partnership platform or on site, they can react to that right away. They can start testing headlines. They can start optimizing it for the international market. If it's trending in Hong Kong and it's trending in Singapore, how do we optimize that readership for or that content for a specific demographic? So I think both are very critical to the business. One in the shorter term and kind of the immediate day-to-day, and then another one for longer-term purposes.
And with some of these metrics, we have our risk signals built in, right, to tell us when things are going wrong. And one of the problems is we all have alarm fatigue. How do you incentivize people in your business, Yann, to pay attention to those anomalies?
Sorry, I didn't get it.
When everybody has alarm fatigue, how do you get everyone to pay attention to the anomalies?
Yeah, so I would say that it's highly dependent for each metrics and for each team, obviously, because they don't tracking the same result. And we're trying always to get to react more in real time and having these metrics in real time to be able to react. But some metrics, we have to be very careful about the decisions that we can take on the spot, where the metrics are getting, where the metrics especially need to be analyzed more on a trend and not only on an exact number or current snapshot of the metrics.
And how do you see your organization responding to that volume of risk signals coming through your data sets?
I think it's important to also identify that the metrics that you're tracking, are they predictive metrics or lagging metrics? A lot of times what happens is that the metrics we pick are important, but by the time you realize there is a decline or there is a concern, it's too late. It has already happened. Let's say an attrition metric. If a user has already, there is the attrition, then it's very hard to bring that person back. So we invest heavily in identifying good quality predictive metrics which can show early signs of success or failure, so that if there is a trend which is good or bad, the stakeholders can take the appropriate action early to avoid the eventual failures, right? So that is, I think, one of the key investments we have done to make sure that instead of getting into a fatigue where you are too late in detecting something, then you try, you're kind of rushed, but then nothing happens, and you feel fatigued about it, you rather always stay alert and have enough time to react and make things happen. So that's one strategy that has worked for us at Carousell.
And now we have just a few minutes left on our panel. If you could give any of these guys the best advice you wish you had known prior to taking your jobs, what would that be? Start with you, Akbar.
So the jobs they would like to do.
What's the advice you wish you had before you started your job?
Please persist. You know, this isn't magic. Especially data science isn't magic. So just persist with what you are doing, and it will show you the path. So be patient and be a little bit more rigid towards your approach when you work towards it. Yeah.
On my side, I would say to be careful of hyper awareness and thinking that we need to track everything all the time. Companies are moving fast. We always have blind spots, which always try to minimize them, but we should not be blocked and to take any decision if we're still missing some piece of data, because it's impossible to track everything at every level in a company that's growing fast.
Yeah, three quick things. Foundations we already talked about, so building a really strong data infrastructure that gives you good data to start with. The second is to have focus, I think. So we track hundreds, if not thousands of metrics across the company, but having laser focus on a few specific ones so that you can really grow those and celebrate those, when you hit them. And then finally is just to continue learning, right? The data space is constantly evolving. There's new languages, new libraries, new technology always coming out. So I think it's a continual learning process and evolution process. So those are the three.
So for me, it will be like be curious, but at the same time, stay humble. I think a lot of times we have a hunch that, oh, this is how it should work, but the data tells differently. So be humble to respect data and be act like a data detective. I mean, it's like your job is not to be right. Your job is to find the right answer from the data. So that would be my advice.
So we've had an interesting panel here today. Every single person in this room wants to work in an environment where they have agility, where we have hyper-awareness in order to make informed decisions, and not only to act smart, but to think smart. And in this session, we've explored big data and the various metrics, both the health metrics and the growth metrics. We've looked at the things that are most relevant to business performance in terms of just-in-time, real-time, and traditional metrics and the value that they've delivered. And we've looked at the value of transparency, education, and access in order to build organizational alignment. And lastly, we've got some wise words of advice from these sage data officers. 1 is about building the foundations, 2 is about having laser focus, and 3 is about continuous learning and persistence. Thank you very much to our panelists. Enjoy lunch, everybody, and we look forward to seeing you at the next panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much to all of our panelists. It's now time for a short break. And